I'm Vinnie Politan. The subject of my investigation is the biggest case in the history of South Carolina and one of the biggest trials in the history of court TV. Alex Murdaugh, the family annihilator from the Low Country. Here's the story. In the shadowed marshlands of South Carolina's Low Country, a tale of privilege, power, and betrayal unraveled in the most shocking way. Alex Murdaugh, once a respected attorney from a family that ruled the legal world for generations, stood accused of executing his own wife, Maggie, and their youngest son, Paul. The brutality stunned even the most hardened investigators. A mother gunned down, a son shot at close range, both left lifeless on the family's sprawling Moselle estate. The trial gripped the nation, blending small-town Southern drama with a real-life legal thriller. Prosecutors painted Murdaugh as a desperate man, cornered by financial ruin and addicted to opioids, willing to destroy his family to save himself. In the courtroom, the air was thick with tension. Every witness, every tear, every photograph from the crime scene pulling the Low Country deeper into its own dark reckoning. A guilty verdict would change everything, and it did. What a case, what a trial, what an incredible tragedy. Annihilating your own family. I want to start by going back, and this is really, I think, the beginning of the investigation. You have the responding officers, body camera video of Alex Murdaugh in those first moments after he has murdered his family. Take a look.
This is the firearm you brought from inside the house?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I went and got. This is a long story. My son was in a boat wreck a few months back. He's been getting threats. Most of it's been benign stuff we didn't take serious.
Okay.
You know, he's been getting like punched. I know that's somebody. I know that's what it is.
Okay. When did you get home? Right when you called, or did you go to the house first? Where is the house?
I came to the house first. My mom has late stages Alzheimer's, and my dad is in the hospital. Okay. I left. I don't know what time. I can go back on my phone and tell you the exact times. Did you check?
Okay. Did I check what?
Did you check them?
We got medical guys that are. That's what they're gonna do. Okay.
What are they doing? Can they hurry?
They are. Yes, sir. That gentleman that was out here already, he's one of the battalion chiefs. Okay. How did you pull up? You from back there?
I went to the house and they weren't home, which was odd. I tried to call. Okay. And then I knew they had been down here before I left to go to my mom's. Okay. And so that is loaded. Okay. You might want to unload it. But I mean.
Is this the only firearm with you? This is the only one, or is there any more in the truck?
I believe that's it.
You think that's the only one? Okay.
I'm 99%.
Do you normally have any other firearms in your vehicle?
I don't, but occasionally occasionally there's a pistol in there. Okay.
Just wait right here for me for a second, okay?
Well, you can check them, they're dead. They are dead, aren't they?
Just turn on those.
Yes, sir. That's what it looks like.
Randy. Maggie's all are dead. Where are you now? All right. Yeah, the police are here now. The police are here now. That's my brother.
Okay. When was the last time you were here with them? Or talked to them or anything like that?
It was earlier tonight. I don't know the exact time, but
okay.
I left. I was probably gone an hour and a half from my mom's, and I saw them about 45 minutes before that.
Okay.
I rode around with Paul for 2 hours this afternoon in the pickup truck.
That's your son, Paul?
So this is the beginning of this homicide investigation. It brings us to the first question in our investigation. It's all about the suspect, defendant / killer. When did Alex Murdaugh become a suspect? How did that develop? Here to answer that question is someone who knows more about this case than anyone other than probably the killer, Alex Murdaugh, and that is the chief attorney of the State Grand Jury Division in South Carolina, Creighton Waters, lead prosecutor in the Alex Murdaugh trial. But you folks know that already because you watched the case with me. Creighton, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here, Vinny. It's great to be here on a Friday night from beautiful Lake Murray, South Carolina.
Oh, so fantastic.
Glad to be here.
Fantastic. So take us to the beginning, right? So we're watching, we just see this is like really the beginning of the investigation. What happens, what makes and turns Alex Murdaugh into a suspect initially?
Well, I don't know if suspect is the right word. Whenever you have a situation where two family members are killed and one is still alive, automatically that's someone you have to focus on to include or exclude. Automatically, if you have someone who is the person that finds the people supposedly dead, that's someone you have to focus on and include or exclude. And then automatically, if you have someone who is the last person to have seen them alive, that's automatically someone you have to focus on to include or exclude. Alex Murdaugh was all three of those things. So right out of the gate, he's got to be somebody that law enforcement focuses on. But I have to point out that this was such a, as we all know, such a unique and stunning event. Law enforcement is showing up on the scene of one of the most prominent attorneys in the state, certainly in that area of the state. And it certainly was, obviously a difficult situation for them, for anyone to even conceive that someone like Alex Murdaugh, who at least outwardly had the reputation that he did, could possibly be the one who committed these crimes. So law enforcement shows up in a very unique circumstance. Before too long, other lawyers show up who are Alex's law partners. So you have the cream of the legal community in that area of the state on the scene. And so they had to navigate that, and they did it well. Ultimately, they did it very well. David Owen's interview with Alex, started the process of looking at him, and he was somebody that had to be looked at from the very beginning. That being said, SLED and the state grand jury focused on all kinds of leads, hundreds of leads, but those went nowhere, and the leads that we had that we presented at trial came back to Alex.
So was there one particular moment or fact or something he said or something you learned that convinced you? When were you convinced, oh, he actually did this to his own family?
So I think, early on we became aware that the shell cases around Maggie matched cases on the property, and that gun was missing. The shotgun was missing. So we knew family weapons were involved, and that's obviously a pretty damning fact. Then we also, as we presented at trial, became aware of the raincoat that had the GSR on it, and that became pretty significant. But, a couple months later, as we're all aware, the side of the road happened, and Alex had been announced by his firm. He had been terminated for allegedly stealing client money. And immediately I knew that's something that we needed to focus on for two reasons. Number one, that was such a stunning thing to hear about this lawyer who was so highly powerful and influential. And it was something that we needed to focus on just for the purpose of exposing, if it were true, and it was, the abuse of the judicial system and the abuse of clients by a powerful lawyer using his law license to steal. That in its own right was something we had to do. But also, as we started to do that, and we all of a sudden started to really paint the true picture of this man. And as we continued to investigate the murders and investigate those financial crimes, they ultimately dovetailed. And I think that it was after a few months of that when I really started to understand who this man was and what was motivating him that it really clicked. And then, of course, in April of 22, we got into Paul's phone and got the kennel video, and it was a no-doubter at that point, from our perspective, from what we presented to the jury.
So how important is it for you, because we always talk about motive when we cover cases on Court TV, and we always are reminded that it's not an element of the crime, it's not something prosecutors have to prove, but as a prosecutor, and you're going, you're investigating a Murdaugh, how important, and a father and a husband as well, how important was it for you to get some understanding of the why of it and what impact did that have on you once you figured out that there was a reason, right? Because not an excuse, not an explanation, but a reason why in his mind he did this.
Yeah, so I always say that motive is not an element, but it's the only element. And the reason for that is that is what we as prosecutors, what law enforcement as investigators, what jurors want to know is why someone could do something that is so far outside of the bounds of normal behavior. And so to me, that's always a crucial thing to focus on. It is the motive is ultimately evidence of identity and showing who could do this and why could they do it. And so again, you know, that's the first thing that we're looking at. You're looking at all sorts of forensic evidence and all the rest of it, but as we identify targets or subjects that are important in an investigation, the main thing I'm wanting to do is to create a timeline, paint a picture, paint a story of what's going on in their life. And when you do that and you really start to understand someone, then you can really start to understand what seems to be the unimaginable, and that's of course the brutal murder of someone's own wife and son.
Now, I know it's a relatively small legal community in South Carolina and in, you know, the Low Country. It seemed like everyone knew each other when I was down there. Did you know Alex Murdaugh before this? Had you had interactions with him?
Well, I was 2 years behind him in law school, but actually I did not know him. But I did know his father, who, as you know, was the longtime solicitor down there. That's a district attorney. We call them solicitors. And of course, his father, his grandfather, and his great-grandfather had all been the chief prosecutor in that area of the state. But I had worked with Mr. Randolph in actually a death penalty case where a trooper had been murdered. And so I did know Mr. Randolph, who was, you know, sort of a legend in the prosecutorial community. Alec, I didn't know other than knowing of him. Again, this family was well known, and the power that they wielded and the power that they had wielded in that area of the state, not only politically, but also in the law enforcement community, also in the judiciary, that all of that was economically, all of that was well known to me.
All right, Creighton Waters, the prosecutor, staying with us. When we come back, what impact did this case have on the Low Country?
I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my son, Pawpaw.
The matriarch of the Adelson family gets arrested.
Donna Adelson is facing charges of murder, the death of her former son-in-law, Dan Markell.
Prosecutors say a bitter child custody battle was the motive for the murder-for-hire plot.
Now that Donna has turned into a defendant, what's next for the Adelson clan?
Now that the ship is really sinking fast, blood doesn't matter that much.
The Matriarch Mastermind murder trial. Live coverage begins next week, only on Court TV.
The defendant will rise. Madam Clerk, you may publish the verdict.
The State versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh, defendant. Guilty, verdict. Guilty, guilty, guilty.
The guilt, what a moment inside the courtroom. By the way, that was the clerk, Becky Hill, who's gotten into some of her own drama that we'll be talking about during this program, delivering that verdict. And there's Alex Murdaugh's reaction to all of it. Take a look. You know, this case was huge in many respects, but the way I describe it, it was really a big trial in a small town. Take a look.
I respect this court, but I'm innocent. I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my son, Pawpaw.
Mr. Murdaugh, I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh. I sentence you for the term of the rest of your natural life for the murder of Paul Murdaugh, whom you probably love so much. I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life.
I'd like to start real briefly by thanking our team, First, excuse me, let me put my glasses on. Our chief prosecutor, I tell you, I appointed Creighton Waters to be the chief prosecutor of this case nearly a year and a half ago. And I want to say I'm pretty brilliant because I picked the right guy. And I want to say thank you to Creighton Waters. Creighton, you did a fantastic job. I don't think there's another attorney in the state of South Carolina that could have led this Herculean effort. We would not be here if it wasn't for SLED. And I want to thank Mark Keel and his team and all of the men and women across the entire state law enforcement division for what they did to make tonight a possibility. I also want to thank the FBI and the Secret Service, our federal partners. We had to utilize many of their assets and resources. We couldn't do all the things that we did without our federal partners. We had a lot of local partners. We had the Colleton County Sheriff's Department, Becky Hill, Sheriff Hill and his team, providing the security. They did a phenomenal job, and they were there. They were the first responders the night on June 7, 2021, when Maggie and Paul were butchered brutally. They were the first responders, and they were the first ones to be there. The Charleston County Sheriff's Office, the Orangeburg County Sheriff's Office were instrumental in supporting our investigative efforts. You all know Kenny Kinsey, our chief crime scene expert, was with the Orangeburg Sheriff's Office. I also want to thank the city of Walterboro. I think the mayor is here somewhere, and the police department. They provided security. Thank you. This whole community has embraced our entire team, and I cannot thank you enough.
Okay, I mean, big case, small town. Brings us to the next question in our investigation tonight, which is, what impact did this case have on the Low Country, you know, for the community, for the legal community, for our system of justice? Here to help answer our question, Creighton Waters, lead prosecutor in this case, the man who put him behind bars. What are your thoughts there about having such a big case in such a small community? What's the long-term impact, you think? Is it a positive one, a negative one?
Well, first, Vinnie, I'm glad you played that clip where Attorney General Wilson thanked everybody. You know, I'm lucky. I got to be the quarterback, so to speak, of this team. You saw some of the people standing behind them, my staff in the state grand jury division, people at SLED, Colleton County, just to name a few. And I'm just lucky that I had all these amazing people around me that helped us succeed at this Herculean task. But as to the effect, I think the effect has been massive, and not only in that part of South Carolina, but across the nation. And, you know, when I first started to do the financial side of this investigation, I met with some of that initial batch of victims that we indicted. And to a man or woman, many of them looked at me and said, Mr. Waters, I don't want any part of this. You don't know who you're messing with. I have to live here. And we told them, I said, look, I can't tell your story without you. I can't make change without you. But I promise you that you will not be alone and that we will see this through to the end. And that was real courage, because particularly those initial victims, to stand up and be willing to have their story be told. Because ultimately, if there is a positive legacy from the horrible murders of Maggie and Paul, which obviously were the most important thing, it was exposing this corruption of this powerful lawyer who had used his power and his influence and 100 years of family legacy to essentially treat the judicial system that's supposed to be for the benefit of all, and to have justice, and just treat it as his own personal fraud machine from which he stole millions and millions and millions of dollars. So it has had a huge effect, because I know I've talked to people down there that there has kind of been a blanket lifted from this community ever since this case has happened. And not only that, but I've had the fortune to go speak to various groups across the country, bar conventions, CLEs, law enforcement groups, and I've had judges, lawyers, attorneys, law enforcement, law students come up to me all across the country and say that this case really mattered to them, because it re-enthused them about justice, about their legal profession, and it made them confident again that somebody who had power and privilege and wealth still could face accountability. And so that's, I think, the lasting effect of this, I hope, is that this case has shown that no matter what the setup was of this sort of a small town, maybe this sort of boss hog type of system, that still justice could be done, and it was done in South Carolina.
So as the case continues and the appeals go forward, a big focus has been on the court clerk, Becky Hill. What are your thoughts about what happened at the trial with Becky and the drama surrounding all of that, and now that it's front and center in this appeal?
Sure. Well, obviously the appeal is pending and there are charges pending against Becky. So I'm still prosecutor and I can't comment on those other than to say what our positions are. And of course, we had that hearing in front of former Chief Justice Jean Toll, and she ultimately brought in all the jurors and examined them and ultimately found that the claim that there was any effect on this verdict was not credible. And these jurors were clear about that. They came in and said that our verdicts were based on the law, the facts, and the evidence. But more importantly, Justice Toll concluded in her order that you had 6 weeks of this trial. You saw all the evidence. You had, me and my team. You had Dick Harpootlian and Jim Griffin and their team. You had Judge Newman. You had all of this evidence. And the idea that a few, as Justice Toll put it, a few fleeting, foolish comments, if they occurred, somehow were the tipping point in this case is absurd. And that's what Justice Toll concluded. That's, of course, what we've argued on appeal. And ultimately, our state Supreme Court will address that. And we are certainly confident in our position.
Fantastic. Well, Crane, it's been great catching up with you. Everybody wants to know, when is the band performing next?
Well, we still are. My band, Lighten Up Francis, is still playing. We've taken a couple of months off in the summer, but we've been playing around the Columbia area and around the state. We'll probably pick up some more gigs during the Carolina football season, and also we'll be playing in Georgetown. So still enjoying that, still having a lot of fun doing that.
Fantastic.
Everybody's much more interested in my cover band after this happened, right?
Oh, absolutely. They love it. They love it. All right, Creighton Waters, thanks so much. Great to see you. All right, folks, we got a lot more to get to. Up next, why did Becky Hill write the book? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the big trial in a small town, the case of Alex Murdaugh, the family annihilator, and all the drama surrounding the controversial clerk of courts, Becky Hill. Here's the story. In the heart of South Carolina's Low Country, the trial of Alex Murdaugh was already a storm of betrayal, greed, and murder. But the drama didn't end with the verdict. Courtroom whispers soon turned into explosive allegations involving Colleton County Clerk of Court Becky Hill. She was accused of influencing jurors, breaking the sacred seal of impartiality in one of the most watched trials in America. Hill's alleged conduct, chatting with jurors, making suggestive comments, cast a shadow over the already sensational proceedings. Inside the packed courtroom, every gaze shifted from Murdaugh's steely stare to the woman at the clerk's desk, now under suspicion herself. Could the integrity of a double murder conviction be undone by the very officials sworn to protect it? The Low Country had never seen anything like it. A trial within a trial, where truth, lies, and justice blurred under the hot glare of national attention. And a whole lot of national attention on this case. I mean, this thing took on a life of its own. Now, after the trial, Julie Grant had Becky Hill, the clerk of court, on her show, along with Neil Gordon, and the two of them wrote a book about the trial. Take a listen.
They are the co-authors of the book Behind the Doors of Justice, The Murdaugh Murders. Neil Gordon and Becky Hill are joining us this morning. And also important to note that Becky Hill is the clerk of court in Colleton County, an elected position. And during her first term, she sat through this trial. Becky, I'll begin with you, please. Welcome to you both. Glad to have you on. And tell us, in your job, give us an idea. What do you typically do? And in terms of seeing a case of this magnitude, I would imagine this was kind of a first of its kind for Colleton County.
Well, the clerk of court does a big job of being a liaison between the judge, the lawyers, the public, the documents that are in a trial. In a case of this magnitude, there's a lot of documents, there's a lot of paper, there was a lot of people that had come together from all over the world. We had people coming from France, England, California, Wyoming, and so many other places, just to be able to open our doors and have everything together for the trial that we were going to have. Just a normal, any other day kind of trial was huge. It was epic.
The title, Behind the Doors of Justice, came from Becky, and she had sort of thought about it and even made some notes late nights after 12-hour days, getting ready for the next day of trial.
And that brings us to the next question in our investigation, which is, why did Becky Hill write the book? Why? Here to help answer that question is South Carolina criminal defense attorney Lori Murray and Neil Gordon, co-author of the book Trial Watchers and Becky Hill's book Behind the Doors of Justice. All right. Great to see y'all. It's been a while. Neil, why don't you start? Why did Becky Hill write the book with you?
Well, I think she wanted to chronicle what we understand is probably the trial of the century in the state of South Carolina, at least, and created such a buzz across the country. And she just wanted to be able to share the insight in real time, what was happening and how all the players came together. And of course, there certainly was a profit motive. I mean, I wanted to earn some money. She wanted to earn some money. And we thought that it would be the first book out, and it would be interesting because it's very rare, almost never happens, probably illegal in different states, for a sitting clerk of court to be able to go ahead and share her thoughts, even though there was a possibility of a future appeal.
Yeah. Lori, I want to take a listen to Rhonda McClevin, who is the Barnwell County Clerk of Courts. Let's see what she had to say about Becky.
First of all, she said we might want to write a book because she needed a lake house and I needed to retire. And then further conversations, a guilty verdict would sell more books.
All right, Lori, why do you think she wrote the book? You think it's just, money? And what do you think of that line, a guilty verdict would sell more books?
Just poor judgment. Can we just go with poor judgment from the get-go? I can't tell you what is in Becky Hill's mind. I would never begin to understand what was going through her mind. Obviously, there was a money aspect of it, but I also believe that it was not enough for her to be sitting at the front of the courtroom. She wanted to insert herself into the limelight, into the spotlight, and you can tell from that by the fact that she wanted to go on all the TV shows after the verdict was issued. There's a lot of reasons, but I think that mostly it was probably the attention.
Neil, did you share that idea that a guilty verdict would sell more books?
No, not at all. I honestly don't think it mattered. I can just speak to my experience with Becky. We never discussed that, or she never acknowledged that. And maybe I was naive. It just never came up. I was just too busy trying to look at each chapter and how we should sort of walk through a book for readers. But quite honestly, whether it was guilty, not guilty, mistrial, or what have you, I honestly don't think it mattered.
Lori, how shocked were you, as someone who practices down there, that this book was written, was published, and Becky Hill was the one, kind of behind this whole thing, the clerk of court?
Well, he's right. It was the first book that came out, and there have been many more since then. But we knew from the very beginning there were rumors swirling in the legal community about this book, that something was in there that should not be in there. And I remember, I think I've told you before, I bought the book trying to figure out what it was. but it is all about the fact that she shouldn't have been writing this book. This, she was writing on the tax dollars of, the taxpayers' time. There's so many things that just was such bad judgment.
Neil, what was your relationship with Becky? How would you describe it, and how did you get involved? Like, I understand how she got involved because she's the clerk of court. She wanted to buy the lake house. But how did you get involved in all of it?
Well, first of all, my wife, who I call the OG trial watcher, who inspired our book, Trial Watchers, was there. She's a photographer, although she did not get a media pass. She was just there because she was interested like everyone else. And she just happened to be on Photographer's Row the day that the jury and the judge and other officials, including Becky, were going to go to Moselle to look at the crime scene. And there was another sort of reporter with a media shirt on without a press pass. And Becky came up to my wife, Melissa, and wondered if he was taking pictures through the car of jurors. And so they struck up a friendship, and that's how that sort of happened. And then took a selfie. Melissa got her cell number, sent it to her, and then Becky said, hey, I wanted to write a book. I've been talking about it for months before you know of anyone. And we understand she sort of shopped it around afterwards to discover someone. And, I've been in sort of small town Augusta, Georgia now for about 30 years, grinding out an enjoyable media career, but I certainly haven't got rich. And I'd never written a book. And I just thought, Vinnie, this is my shot, and it's unique. It's a little bit different, and we did. I think Lori probably knows the media attorney Jay Bender, and in released public documents, so I can say his name, it was shared that he reviewed what the ethical implications were, and he told her that it is okay according to the law. Now, I think that law should be changed in hindsight, and I think there's a lot of laws in South Carolina that maybe should be changed.
Yeah, things got a little more messy. Neil, great to catch up with you. Lori's going to stick around because the next question is a big one. Should Alex Murdaugh get a new trial?
Not guilty.
How shall you be tried?
By God and my country.
Next week on Opening Statements.
A law professor gunned down, but was his mother-in-law behind the killing? Previewing the matriarch mastermind murder trial.
Opening Statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Did your comments or were your comments in any way phrased in favor of one side or against another side? Or were they more of a neutral comment about paying attention?
No, it was not for one side or the other.
During the course of the deliberations, once the jury went back there, did you have any contact with the juries or have any substantive discussion with them?
Not at all.
Before Mr. Murdaugh testified, did you tell the jury not to be fooled by the evidence presented by Mr. Murdaugh's lawyers?
Mr. Hartpooley and I never talked to the jurors about any of the evidence.
Okay, the answer would be yes or no, then you can explain. Did you say that?
No.
Okay. Did you ever instruct the jury to watch him closely immediately before he testified, looking at his actions, looking at his movements? Did you ever tell a jury to do that?
No.
Did you ever tell the jury to pay attention to Mr. Murdaugh's testimony?
To pay attention, not specifically to his testimony. I did tell the jury to pay attention.
To what?
Just generally in the hallway when I was speaking.
Not to him?
No.
Just any witness?
Right.
Even that doesn't seem like it's something that someone from the court should do. Like, if a judge wants to instruct the jury, that's fine, but no one else should be telling the jury to do anything. Interesting. That was her take, and she's denying that she was attempting to influence the jury to get a guilty verdict to sell more books. Now, I want you to take a listen to two of the jurors talking about what their perspective is on these alleged communications from Becky Hill.
Did you hear Becky Hill, clerk of court for Clarendon County, make any comment about this case before your verdict?
I did. Yes, ma'am.
What did she say?
It was the day that Mr. Murdaugh was taking the stand.
Yes, sir.
And she made a comment about watch his body language.
About watch his
body language.
His body language, I see.
Yes, ma'am.
And what else?
That's all I can recall.
All right, sir. Was your verdict on March the 2nd, 2023 influenced in any way with any communications by the clerk of court, Becky Hill, in this case?
No.
Did you hear Ms. Becky Hill make any comment about this case before your verdict?
Yes, ma'am.
If yes, what did Ms. Hill say?
To watch his actions.
To watch his actions? What else?
To watch him closely.
Was your verdict influenced in any way by the communications of the clerk of court in this case?
Yes, ma'am.
The jurors just said she was influenced by the clerk of court. And two of the jurors have similar testimony about what she said to them. He's now appealed. He's now trying to get a new trial, et cetera. And that brings us to an important question. At this point, probably the most important question, which is, should Alex Murdaugh get a new trial? Here to help with our investigation, criminal defense attorney Lori Murray, also joining us, attorney Ali Benevento. All right, Lori, I'll begin with you. Your thoughts here. You're in South Carolina.
Yeah, and we've been through this trial together, Vinny. Watched it from the very beginning, and honestly, I don't know how you have these kind of comments without getting a new trial. I think they were extremely prejudicial. We have case law out there that talks about innocuous comments to a jury from a clerk of court or other court personnel, but there's never been anything directly on point like this that actually talks about the weight of the evidence that has not been given a new trial. I think that you have to really look at even whether they knew or whether they didn't know it was affecting their verdict. It had to have some kind of impact when somebody who is sitting at the front of the courthouse is telling you to watch his body language, which is an implication that he's lying.
Ali, what are your thoughts here? Should Alex Murdaugh get a new trial?
Well, Vinny, there's certainly a whole lot here. And as you heard from the jurors themselves, what happened influenced at least one of those jurors' verdicts. And so the defense's argument here is essentially that the standard should be that this is presumptively prejudicial. And it sounds like, at least in one instance from that one juror, it had an impact. And so there's an argument there that, yes, we cannot have sitting clerks of court making comments to a jury that, exactly like Lori said, seem to imply that she's saying there's something he was doing or something he was saying that should have led them to believe that they should watch him carefully. I think we all know what the implication of that is.
Yeah, Lori, you know what's so shocking about this? We cover so many trials, like all over the country, South Carolina, Florida, California, wherever. And every judge is always so important, asking the jurors, did you talk to anyone? Did you hear anyone, And here, I don't think any judge would ask, well, did anyone from the courthouse, did the clerk, it wouldn't even enter your mind that someone working for the court would attempt to talk about anything relative to any witness, especially the defendant testifying in his own defense. And this is almost like mind-blowing. While it has nothing to do with whether or not he did it or didn't do it, it's about the process. So if he doesn't get a new trial out of this, what does that do for every case going forward in South Carolina?
I think it's not just a blow for the state of South Carolina, it's a blow for, defendants everywhere. But you're right, this is outrageous that someone in the court system would actually make comments about the testimony in a trial. And, we talk about this appeal that's going on, and they called the state called these comments innocuous, silly, or whatever the wording was that they used, but they're not innocuous or silly. Then the state wants you to believe that the overwhelming weight of evidence of his guilt should outweigh anything that's these silly little comments. But that's just like you said, this is about the process. It's not about whether he's guilty or not. This is about the process and whether he got a fair trial. And I don't know how in this case, even if it's subtle, even if it was one comment over, the month or however long the trial was, even if it's one comment, you have to, for the process and for the protection of the process, you have to give him a new trial and let that process play out again.
And Allie, my guess is if this comes up in the middle of the trial and the judge finds out about it and does a little inquiry, that juror would be gone. The juror would not be able to deliberate in the case if someone had talked to them about the witness, especially someone from the courthouse. I mean, I've seen jurors tossed for much less than that.
Yes, and this is a sitting clerk of court who had been there for years and years and years. She knew better. She knew she should not have been talking to those jurors. And exactly like Lori said, this is about the integrity of the process. The evidence against Alex Murdaugh may or may not have been overwhelming. He may or may not have been convicted anyway. But this is so much bigger than the trial of Alex Murdaugh. This is about, do we allow sitting clerks of court, court personnel, or anyone to speak directly to jurors to imply that a person who's not yet been found guilty is guilty, and to try to have an influence over that process. That impacts defendants everywhere, so far beyond just Alec.
Well, let me ask you this, Lori. We have about 40 seconds or so. In South Carolina, do you believe he will get a new trial? And to me, that's a different question than should, right? Should versus will, right? Public enemy number one. Undermine the system of justice. If they have to do another trial, it's going to be another huge undertaking. Will he get a new trial?
Don't forget all the reputations that are on the line with this thing. You have Judge Newman's reputation, you have Justice Toll's reputation, you have Alan Wilson, who's going to be running for governor. There are a lot of other political aspects at play. I'll be really interested to see what the Supreme Court does, but I know they'll make the right call.
All right. Lori Murray, thank you so much. Ali Benevento, great to have you both here. The evidence in this case was, from my perspective, overwhelming. By the end of the trial, it was obvious to me that Alex Murdaugh was guilty. But sometimes that doesn't count for much on appeal if there was outside influence on the jury. That's why we really need to keep an eye on this one, folks, to see if Murdaugh gets a second trial. But if he gets the second trial and wins the appeal, right, we go back to square one. He'll be facing the same exact evidence. The question is, would it have the same exact result? I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for answers as the investigation continues.